India, a myth and an idea. Part 1. India, Winston Churchill once barked, is merely a geographical expression. It is no more a single country than the equator. Churchill was rarely right about India, but it is true that no other country in the world embraces the extraordinary mixture of ethnic groups, the profusion of mutually incomprehensible languages, the variety of topography and climate, the diversity of religions and cultural practices, and the range of levels of economic development that India does. And yet, India is more than the sum of its contradictions. It is a country held together by strong but invisible threads. How can one approach this land of snow peaks and tropical jungles with 22 official languages and 22,000 distinct dialects inhabited in the first decade of the 21st century, or over a billion individuals of every ethnic extraction known to humanity? How does one come to terms with a country whose population is nearly 40% illiterate, but which has educated the world's second largest pool of trained scientists and engineers, whose teeming cities overflow while 4 out of 5 Indians scratch a living from the soil? What is the clue to understanding a country rife with despair and disrepair, which nonetheless moved a Mughal emperor to declaim, "If on earth there be paradise of bliss, it is this, it is this, it is this." How does one explain a land where former Prime Minister bitterly criticizes the sale of Pepsi Cola in a country where villagers don't have clean drinking water, and which yet invents a greater quantity of sophisticated software for US computer manufacturers than any other country in the world? How can one portray the present, let alone the future, of an ageless civilization that was the birthplace of 4 major religions, a dozen different traditions of classical dance, 85 political parties, and 300 ways of cooking the potato? Any truism about India can be immediately contradicted by another truism about India. The country's national motto, emblazoned on its governmental crest, is Satyameva Jayate. Truth always triumphs. The question remains, however, whose truth? It is a question to which there are over a billion answers. Everything exists in countless variants. There is no single standard, no fixed stereotype, and no one way. The pluralism is acknowledged in the way India arranges its own affairs. All groups, faiths, tastes, and ideologies survived and contended for their place in the sun. One result is that India strikes many as maddening, chaotic, inefficient, and seemingly unpurposeful, as it muddles through into the 21st century. Another, though, is that India is not just a country but an adventure, one in which all avenues are open and everything is possible. Many observers have been astonished by India's survival as a pluralist state. But India could hardly have survived as anything else. India is huge. It is the world's seventh largest country. India extends 3,214 kilometers from its mountainous northern border with China in the state of Jammu and Kashmir to the southernmost tip of the mainland, the rocky beach of Kanyakumari. Indeed, the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, also Indian territory, are hundreds of nautical miles farther to the southeast in the Bay of Bengal. India's western frontiers with Pakistan in the marshes of Rann of Kutch is 1840 miles, 2944 kilometers away from the thickly wooded hills of northeastern Assam on the country's border with Myanmar. In between, the country of Bangladesh is embraced as an enclave between the Indian state of West Bengal and the northeastern states of Assam, Meghalaya, Mizoram, and Tripura. The country's four extreme represents four dramatically different types of ecological systems, but there are still others within the subcontinent they enclose. These range from the Thar Desert of Rajasthan in the northwest, covering about 8% of India's land surface, to the lush alluvial plain of the Ganga River basin, and India also has the largest area in the world covered by snow and ice outside the polar regions. While the Himalayan mountains allowed a distinctive civilization to flourish in their shadows, they are remarkably penetrable. A number of passes, some more difficult than others, have allowed curious scholars, intrepid traders, and ambitious invaders to bring their own influences to India. The indigenous people around 1500 BC were probably dark skinned Dravidians. Then came the great wave of Aryan migration from the Central Asian steppes. The Aryans were pale skinned and light eyed nomads whose search for a new homeland branched into three waves, one stopping in Persia, one sweep continuing on to Europe as far as Germany, and the other descending into India. This common heritage explains why the Nazi in Germany used a variation of the swastika, an Aryan religious symbol still revered by Indian Hindus. That was not all. Over the centuries, India witnessed the mingling of Greeks, Scythians, and Parthians, Mongols, Huns, and Chinese, and an assortment of mercenary warriors from Central Asia, Iran, Turkey, and even Ethiopia. As they intermarried with each other and with the local population, the Indian melting pot produced a people with a variety of skin colors and every physiognomic feature imaginable, as a look at any Indian cricket, hockey, or soccer team will confirm. Immigrants, invaders, and visitors, whether their intentions were warlike or peaceful, usually made for the Gangetic Plain, the fertile stretch of land that gave birth to the Indo Aryan civilization over 3000 years ago. To the east, the Ganga flows to the sea in Bengal, part of which is now the independent state of Bangladesh. Beyond Bangladesh rise the hills and valleys of India's northeast, most of whose people are physically shorter and have mongoloid features akin to their neighbors in Southeast Asia. The seven states of the Northeast embrace a wide diversity of cultural strain, from the tribal traditions of the Nagas and the Mijos to the mainstream Hinduism of Manipur, home of a major school of Indian classical dance. The people range from Bengali migrants in Tripura and Assam to the Christian hill folk of Nagaland, whose official state language is English, from anglicized tea planters to aborigines with bones through their noses. Tourist brochures usually call the Northeast picturesque, the kind of euphemism that accurately suggests both charm and underdevelopment. But diversity does not end with the northern latitudes. The aged and weather beaten peninsula of the Deccan is host to an India of darker shades, hotter food, more rapid speech, and rounded scripts. There is Dravidian pride and a rich overlay of Sanskritic high culture. On both sides of the inverted southern triangle, coastal Indians have for millennia looked beyond their shores for trade and cultural contact with other lands. In the west, traces have been found of contact across the Arabian Sea with Iraq, Yemen, and East Africa going back 3000 years. Jews persecuted in the Babylonian conquest of Judea in the 6th century BC, and Zoroastrians fleeing Islamic rule in Persia in the 8th century AD found refuge and established flourishing communities. Travelers ranged from Saint Thomas the Apostle in the 1st century AD, who brought Christianity to the lush southernmost state of Kerala, to the Portuguese sailor Vasco da Gama in 1492, who took away calico and spices. The enclave of Goa on the west coast was ruled by Portugal till 1961, and that of Pondicherry in the southeast by France. They still bear a different cultural character from the surrounding states. Though the Aryans and later the northern rulers never penetrated so far into the south, South Indians cannot be easily stereotyped. Kerala hosts the oldest Jewish community in the world outside of Middle East, and a Christian community going back to the first decade after Christ, and therefore having a faith and rituals much older than those of the European missionaries who arrived centuries later. What makes so many people one people? One answer is the physical realities of the subcontinent, that is, mountains to the north and northwest, water surrounding the rest, which have carved out a distinct geographical space for Indians to inhabit. Through the millennia, the peoples of India have moved freely within the space, the political and territorial boundaries within them ever shifting and always fungible, but they have rarely, if ever, ventured beyond these natural confines without being conscious of entering alien lands. A second, equally revealing answer may be found in the attitude of the generations of foreigners, from Alexander the Great to the first of the Mughals, who consistently saw the peoples of the land beyond the Indus as Hindustan as one, divided, variegated, richly differentiated, but one. The history of each of the many peoples of India overlaps with each of the others, but only marginally with those outside the geopolitical space of the subcontinent. Their travails and triumphs, their battles and their blessings, their dreams and defeats have all been shared with other Indians. History has bound them together as indissolubly as geography. Thank you very much. India, a myth and an idea. Myth, MYTH, myth means a widely held but false belief of idea. Any truism about India can be immediately contradicted by another truism about India. Truism, TRUISM, truism means a statement that is so obvious or said so often that its truth is not questioned. The country's national motto, emblazoned on its governmental crest, is Satyameva Jayate. EMBLAZONED, emblazoned means shown in order to be very noticeable. Tourist brochures usually call the Northeast picturesque, the kind of euphemism that accurately suggests both charm and underdevelopment. Euphemism, EUPHESIM. Euphemism means a word or phrase used to avoid saying an unpleasant word. Through the millennia, the peoples of India have moved freely within its space, the political and territorial boundaries within them ever shifting and always fungible, but they have rarely, if ever, ventured beyond these natural confines without being conscious of entering alien lands. Fungible, FUNGIBLE. Fungible means easy to exchange or trade for something else of the same type or value. Thank you very much.